Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast Show on CBS Sports HQ. That's Breach. That's Brady. If I were Brian Wilson, it would be the three Bs. Missed opportunity by my parents. Here we go. Let's talk a little NFL, specifically NFC. Got to chuckle out of Brady. Here we go. How many times can we make Brady laugh this hour? Breach. So let's talk NFC West in particular. And John, I'll start with you. Deebo Samuel, as you often do to me and Brinson on the Twitter machines there. He's back to following the San Francisco 49ers. What are your thoughts on what could end up in terms of Deebo Samuel's future? Is it in San Francisco? Is it somewhere else? Should they have traded him over the weekend during the draft? What do you think?
Well, my thoughts are if he is back to following them, that means he wasn't following them. Look, we've all been there before. If you unfollow someone on Instagram or Twitter, that's a giant red flag. That means they made you mad. Maybe they upset you. Maybe there was a breakup involved. But it's never a good thing when you unfollow someone. I can't think of one instance where someone unfollowed someone and then complimented them and then said, oh, you know what, you're so great, that's why I unfollowed you. It just doesn't happen. But I do think Deebo Samuel will be with the 49ers in 2022. If you're going to trade him, you do it during the draft when you can get the most compensation. His stock is the highest. We look at the New York Jets. They offer the 10th overall pick as part of a package to get Deebo Samuel. If you are turning down the 10th overall pick, you are not going to take any deal because I can't imagine a team offering more than that to land Deebo Samuel. And also, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have both been pretty adamant that they plan on having Deebo on the roster going into the season. So I'll be surprised if they do not, if they don't keep him.
Oh, he's going to be on the roster. It just comes down to how they're going to utilize him and if they're going to force him to play this season and not give him the extension that he's looking for. And so the question becomes, what's the extension he's looking for? I would imagine that it's somewhere in the ballpark of $25 million average annual value per year in a contract, very similar to what we saw A.J. Brown sign. And somewhere as far as guarantees at signing, around $40 million, and then upwards of total guarantees around 50 plus, somewhere in that ballpark or vicinity. That's the market. That's what every wide receiver is looking for. The fact is, Deebo Samuel had a phenomenal year last year. And whether it was by design or not, it's neither here nor there. That's what him and his agent are trying to leverage to get this long-term extension with the timing at which, because he's only got one more year left on his deal, and they probably don't want to go the franchise tag route. So the reality is, I'm sure the San Francisco 49ers will offer him something, but the truth of that matter is he'll never be able to live up to that contract. If you look at, for example, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, they've only caught over 1,400 yards once in their careers. And I think you can make the case that they both played with probably the two best quarterbacks in the game, and Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes during that period. So given that we have no idea what Trey Lance is going to be, or even if Jimmy Garoppolo factors into any of this, it's probably more often than likely that you're not going to see an injury to George Kittle, issues with wide receivers, and injuries at running back position that will cause Deebo Samuel to have as many scrimmage yards as what we had a year ago. So, look, it's great timing for him to leverage that last year's deal, but the reality is I don't know that he's going to get paid the money that he thinks he's going to get.
Brady, I got a quick follow-up because you mentioned Trey Lance. How concerned should we be? Not at all, perhaps, about where he is along in his development. We have no idea. He just didn't play. He played once last year, started once, probably played 2 games, I think. Are you at all concerned now, a year out, that he may not be the guy that Kyle Shanahan thought, or is it too early to sort of sound those alarm bells?
Well, it's too early to sound the alarm bells. Practice is practice. One thing that you could tell from Trey Lance just from a little bit he played last year, which maybe sound alarming to some people, is he looked like he wasn't ready. He looked like he was really raw, like a guy who basically started one season in his college career at a lower level. And that's exactly what took place besides one exhibition game. So he looked it, but the more he played throughout the game, the better he looked. And I think that's what this is going to come down to, is if he can continue to getting reps, getting development, he's going to play his best football still a long ways ahead of him. But are the 49ers feeling like they don't have a roster that's built to win the division and potentially win a Super Bowl at this point? That's really the question, because I think when healthy, they're fully capable of doing that. And so the question then becomes, is Trey Lance the best guy for the job right now? Probably not, but neither is Jimmy Garoppolo because his shoulders hurt. So when he comes back, if he's still on the roster, I would be more inclined to think that you put Jimmy Garoppolo in there first and then let Trey Lance come in off the bench if Garoppolo's not playing well in this hypothetical situation. But you put Trey Lance in there and he falls flat on his face, I don't know that you're coming back from that one, whether it's with Trey Lance or your fan base, and selling that he's going to be the guy.
That's a good point. All right, let's move to Arizona. Breach, if I've said it once, said it a million times. In terms of sheer handsomeness, you are the Cliff Kingsbury, the Pick Six podcast. I don't know what that makes me or Brinson, but in terms of the Cardinals, in terms of where they're set up, in terms of Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray crushing it in the first half of the season and then falling apart during the second half of the season, where do you think they are in their progression towards the 2022 season in terms of all the offseason turmoil, in terms of the draft? What do you think?
Well, I think that the Cardinals are still in trouble. Their offseason's been a roller coaster ride, except it's a roller coaster ride through a chainsaw factory. You're just looking all over the place because danger is at every corner. I mean, you started the offseason in February with Kyler Murray making these kind of absurd contract demands because no one in his situation had ever made demands like that. Murray was creating drama where drama did not need to be created because historically quarterbacks in his position don't get extensions till June or July, and he's asking for a new contract in February. Get through free agency, get through the draft first before you start making those demands. And then right when it appears that you have made amends with your star quarterback, boom, DeAndre Hopkins is hit with this 6-game suspension, and that hurts a lot. I mean, we saw what that offense looked like on the field last season when DeAndre Hopkins was out there, and when he wasn't out there, he missed 7 games due to injury, and they struggled in those 7 games. And when he was on the field, the 10 games he played, they went 8-2. He also missed the playoff game. The offense just doesn't look the same. It's not as scary when DeAndre Hopkins, if he's not out there. And so I think the Cardinals have a lot to worry about. They have a lot to figure out, and they still don't have a contract extension done with Kyler Murray. So until that's done, that's another thing they have to worry about. So they've had a pretty disastrous offseason.
I don't know if I'm going to follow suit in that thought process. Look, it was an offseason that was an offseason like any other team in the NFL. And we tend to weigh a lot into someone scrubbing their social media account, which I learned a lot about that this offseason. Apparently, nowadays, you got to scrub all your photos and only do stories. Like, that's the way where you can monetize it. So maybe that's what this was all about. I don't know. Maybe they were going through a transition. It was all about the money, whether that's on social media platforms or from the team. Regardless, I think this also presents as a really good opportunity for Kyler Murray and his agent Eric Burkhart to leverage what could be, a first 6 games where everyone's looking at it saying, well, without Hopkins, what are they going to do? Look at last year. Look how they struggled. Well, once Kyler Murray comes and lights the world on fire in the first 6 games and they don't come to that contract extension agreement, then he's going to be looking at the Cardinals saying, hey, guess what? I'm getting a little bit closer to that 5th year and that much closer to free agency, or you guys haven't used the franchise tag. How about them apples? You want to sign me to an extension now? So it does present a good opportunity for him to perform well in those first 6 games. Another thing I'll include in this is Cliff Kingsbury and the Arizona Cardinals haven't had any issue in the beginning of seasons. It's been the second half of seasons where they've dropped off, and that's something that even traces back to his time at Texas Tech. So I guess if you're going to lose DeAndre Hopkins at any point in time in the season, the first 6 games is probably the one you want to lose it to, because they'll be able to get kind of a second win with him coming back for that second half stretch.
I love Brady hit him with the old Good Will Hunting. How you like them apples? I guess Steve Kimes, the kid with the ponytail that got dunked on a couple times. I like that as well. All right, Brady, I'm going to come right back to you because we're talking about the Seahawks. You played for Pete Carroll for a minute, and you said you absolutely loved playing for him because he made it feel like even for the dog days of August practices that you just want to go out there and run through a wall. He also said Drew Lock's their guy, same guy who also said they're not going to trade Russ Wilson earlier this offseason. So they draft Charles Cross from that air raid scheme, the offensive tackle. They draft Abe Lucas from the air raid scheme, also an offensive tackle. And they get Ken Walker. How comfortable should we feel about what this offense is going to look like? And do you believe Pete Carroll when he says that Drew Lock is going to be their guy going forward?
It's hard to believe that right now. I think this situation changes dramatically in one of 2 ways. Either Jimmy Garoppolo's shoulder gets healthy and the Seahawks are willing to give up something that even within the division, the 49ers are willing to say, okay, we'd rather move on than just outright release him and let him pick where he wants to go, or this may happen anyway. So that's one scenario. And Baker Mayfield, that's another one. They can say that they're not going to trade for him. Okay. As long as the Browns release him, though. That would be a spot if I'm Baker Mayfield and I want to get back on the field. He easily would be the best quarterback on that roster. So that would be one of the destinations that I'd look at. The only problem is it's a really competitive division. Their offensive line has had issues. He came from playing behind one of the best in Cleveland. And as far as wide receivers outside of DK Metcalf, there's not quite as many options, and you're going to run the football a lot, something that I don't know if he was a fan of or not during the Kevin Stefanski era so far, but it seems like they like to run the football a lot in Cleveland. So that's probably going to be the same thing they're doing in Seattle. Either way, it's hard to believe they're going to go into the season with Drew Lock. If that's the case, someone needs to start to kind of create an allegation about tanking, because they must be trying to position for one of these top-round quarterbacks in next year's draft, whether that's Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, or Tyler Van Dyke.
Well, I think Brady just made a great point here, and it is that Pete Carroll is the king of semantics. When he says, hey, we're not going to trade for a quarterback, a veteran quarterback, that doesn't mean they're not going to sign one. And as Brady alluded to, if Baker Mayfield gets released or Jimmy Garoppolo gets released, you're not trading for a quarterback. You're just going out and signing them, and you're signing them at a price you might be willing to pay, because you're not going to pay Baker Mayfield $18 million. You're not going to pay Jimmy Garoppolo $25 million. That being said, if neither of those teams are willing to cut their quarterbacks and you have to get them through a trade, I wouldn't be totally shocked if Pete Carroll sticks to his guns and moves forward with Drew Lock, at least for this season. Because look, we know what Pete Carroll loves to do more than any other coach in the NFL right now, and that is run the football. He's probably got a game plan ready that calls for 71 runs a game. He's not even going to let Drew Lock throw the ball, so it's not going to matter who the quarterback is. This is going to be Pete Carroll's dream season. So I won't be surprised at all if Drew Lock does end up starting at least this season, and then you find someone else next offseason.
Hey, Brady, quick question about Pete Carroll and Baker Mayfield. Let's say he gets cut or traded. He's a big personality. Obviously, he's sworn out his welcome in Cleveland. Pete Carroll's actually really good at taking on guys who perhaps had trouble elsewhere. How do you think that fits, Baker in that locker room with Pete Carroll sort of overseeing it all?
Well, I can tell you this much. I know John Schneider, the general manager, would love Baker Mayfield's personality, because John Schneider's kind of got that fiery personality to him. And then Pete Carroll just knows how to play to the strengths of a player, and I think try to work away from those weaknesses or help him raise that level of it. So whatever perceived weaknesses or whatever perceived strengths they feel like Baker Mayfield has, trust me, they'll play to those. And if they feel like he's a fiery guy and they love seeing that in him and it fires up the team, they will play into that very much. It's very much a player-led locker room in Seattle, and I think Baker would probably love that environment, just from at least the one that he was previously in, given the fact that some of the stuff that's come out of late is issues with Odell Beckham, maybe some other players and how they've talked about him. Whatever the case may be, Seattle's one of those where I think they'd be welcome to playing with him and excited about having him.
All right, let's talk about the Rams now. Breach, I'll start with you, because Jordan Rodriguez, the Athletic, had a behind-the-scenes look at that Rams draft house up in the hills in Los Angeles. Breach, that is right in your wheelhouse. I don't know how you dropped the ball on that one. First, give me your grade on that weekend in that draft house if you're the Sean McVay and Les Snead. And then tell me if you think that the Rams have done enough, just generally speaking, this offseason to maintain their hold atop the NFC.
Well, first of all, I give the house an A+. I've been looking for that thing on Airbnb every day since the draft ended. I don't know if the Rams decide to rent it out for 5 years and just run the franchise from there, because that's what I would do if I were them. I actually think the Rams have done a good job this offseason. One thing that I think has been one of the most underrated moves that it got talked about a little bit, I don't feel like it's talked about enough, is the addition of Allen Robinson. You already had Cooper Kupp in there. You're adding one of the NFL's premier receivers to go with Cooper Kupp. You might even re-sign Odell Beckham. We don't know what's going to happen there, but the fact that they got Allen Robinson under contract is huge. And then defensively, obviously, you have Aaron Donald back. But let's not forget, this team also signed Bobby Wagner. And Bobby Wagner might not be in his prime anymore, but he's still one of the better linebackers in the NFL. They just pulled off a trade for Troy Hill, brought him back to Los Angeles. So it feels like the Rams might actually be better than they were last season. You have a little bit of worry because Andrew Whitworth retired. But you know what? They got Noteboom under contract. The Rams might be better than they were last year when they won the Super Bowl, and that's scary.
I think anytime you have a second year in a system for a quarterback like Matt Stafford, he's only going to excel from here. And that's if they bring back Odell Beckham or not. But the addition of Allen Robinson shouldn't be understated. I mean, he's been waiting for an opportunity to play with a quarterback like this and an offense like this for quite some time. I like what they did in the draft, even though they didn't have a ton of picks. I still think they made some use of the picks that they have, and they have to be good because, well, they give away their first, second-round picks. So the guys they sign in free agency or trade for, those guys better show out and show up. The reality is, though, when Aaron Donald decided to come back, that really led you to what you think this team is trying to do, and that's repeat. They're trying to put it all back together. Sean McVay wouldn't have come back if he didn't think there was a shot of it, and I think he is tied to Matt Stafford as far as how much longer he's going to coach for the Los Angeles Rams. So I think they've got another couple years together. We'll see how this run goes. Then after that, maybe you will see Sean McVay on CBS Sports HQ with us or calling some games on some primetime NFL package.
Oh, man, how far Sean McVay falls if he's on the show with me and John Breach. Brady, you didn't mention Kyron Williams, Notre Dame's own best blocking running back coming into the draft. Drafted on day 3, early in day 3 for the Rams. I think he has a spot there as well to get a lot of playing time with Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers, both with injury histories. So that's also something to look out for. They had pick 104 and were shocked that Cole Strange wasn't there, but they took Logan Bruss out of Wisconsin, a really good football player who probably has a chance to play right away. All right, thank you guys. We're going to take a quick break here. If you love the Pick 6 podcast, this show, you can subscribe to the actual audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back to talk about more NFC, specifically the old NFC East. Welcome back to the Pick 6 podcast show. CBS Sports HQ. Breach, Brady. I'm Brian if you want. All right, let's talk a little NFC East. And let's start, Breach, with 3 guys that you think on any team of your choice in the NFC East that could be the difference makers this year, 2022, for their respective teams. So you got?
Well, if I'm picking my favorite offensive trio, Wilson, I have to go with the Cowboys because I think Dak Prescott is hands down the best quarterback in the division. I remember all the debates everyone was having in 2017 about is Dak Prescott or is it Carson Wentz? Who's the better quarterback? Now that debate's almost laughable because it just feels like Dak Prescott is head and shoulders above any other quarterback in the division, even though Carson Wentz is now back in the division. But as for the 2 guys, the trio there, I'm going to take Dak. I'm going to take CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to take Michael Gallup. I don't need a running back with the Cowboys. Forget running the ball, Dallas. Let Dak cook. Let him throw the ball. We saw what he did last season, 37 touchdowns and just 10 interceptions. Get him in the kitchen. Throw the ball more. Stop relying so much on the run game. I think the Cowboys' offense has a lot of firepower. Obviously Michael Gallup got injured at the end of the season. And if he's back on the field healthy in week 1, I think Prescott, Lamb, and Gallup could put up some huge numbers in 2022.
The most fascinating one to me is in Philly. I think Jalen Hurts now surrounded by Devontae Smith on one side, A.J. Brown to the other. I will take that all day long. Hurts has continually gotten better as a passer from the pocket. It helps a little bit, too, when you've got a guy like A.J. Brown who can get you a ton of yards after the catch. And you add that to one of the best route runners, one of the best rookies that we saw last year in Devontae Smith. I think you're going to have a nice tandem for him, not only to help him improve, but maybe take one of those big jumps, something close to a Josh Allen type jump in Buffalo once he got Stephon Diggs. Maybe we see that sort of jump with a guy like A.J. Brown who's big and physical enough to provide you with a bunch of different things he can do within the offense. And then Devontae Smith, who's a big playmaking machine, not to mention Jalen Hurts just taking off and running when he can too. So to me, I'm most intrigued by that. I think Dallas, you kind of know what you're going to get. Wentz, we'll see what happens there. Ryan, I feel like you're going to lean more towards Washington right now.
It's like we're mind meshing again, Brady. You're exactly right. Look, I'll be honest. I don't feel great about this. I know that Breach was going to go with Dallas. You were a wild card, Brady, but I was pretty sure you were going to go with Washington. So I took one for the team there. So they have Jahan Dotson. Love him. Great hands, undersized, but he can get open. They have Terry McLaurin, who wants to get paid this year, and deservedly so. We'll see how that works out in terms of their contract. And there he is, Ronald McDonald, Carson Wentz. I went with him as well. He needs to have a huge bounce-back season. There's no 2 ways about it. He has struggled in Indy. He struggled previously towards the end of his career in Philadelphia. And now, 3rd time's the charm, fingers crossed, you hope, if you're Ron Rivera. It hasn't gone well for him in recent years, but maybe he can find something close to that form of what we saw in 2017 before the injury or 2018 when he came back. And this team has a chance to compete because the division, if we're being honest, isn't great. It's certainly better than it was 3 months ago before the start of free agency. But I'll roll with those guys. But Brady, I think you're exactly right about Philadelphia. I give Howie Roseman a lot of credit. They were on and off in terms of drafting wide receivers in the first and second round. So instead of rolling the dice there, they went and got A.J. Brown. They know what they have in him. And to your point about Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, that's going to be Jalen Hurts' time to shine. He's almost going to be out of excuses, perhaps similarly to what's going to happen in Miami with Tua. But that's where I'm at. I'm all in quotation marks, on Washington. But we'll see, right? We'll find out together. All right. Brady, I'm going to come back to you. We'll talk about the Cowboys. And it seems like, 20 minutes after McCarthy got hired in Dallas, he was already in the hot seat. He did not help himself last year in the playoffs with that quarterback sneak that as time ran out and sort of torpedoed their chances. What has to happen for the Cowboys, for people like Breach, not so much me, people like Breach, to quit panning Mike McCarthy in terms of his job being in jeopardy?
A Super Bowl. I mean, it's that simple. It's a Super Bowl. There's nothing else that's going to paint the Dallas Cowboys in the light that I think everyone pictures them in, and the hiring of Mike McCarthy and everything else. It's a Super Bowl. They've got to win one. They have it feels like forever, or at least the past, few decades. So and here's the hard part about the Dallas Cowboys this offseason. You wish a lot of the news was maybe about some of the acquisitions they've made or the draft picks and this and that. It's really been more about Jerry Jones. It's some stuff that he's been, I guess, rumored of or alleged of, and things he's been saying, trying to show everyone his draft board and whatever the crazy stuff he's doing. I mean, that's a problem. Like, if you identify your team with the owner, Jerry Jones, and not their brand of football on the field, that's a problem. That's the Dallas Cowboys for you, 2022. So, look, I'm sure they'll end up being a playoff team, in part because they play in a bad division in the NFC East. But the truth of the matter is, I don't have high hopes for them. I really don't. I just think right now, when you look at how they're run and what the focus is always on Dallas, it's on Jerry Jones. And it should be about the Troy Aikmans, the Michael Irvins, the Emmitt Smiths, like all the great players that they used to have back when they were winning. Back then, it wasn't focused on the ownership. It wasn't focused even on the head coach to a degree. It was about the players and the stars. It's not about that anymore. It feels like it's all about Jerry's world and we're all living in it.
Well, speaking of the owner, I'm glad Brady Quinn doesn't own the team because he's ready to fire Mike McCarthy if he doesn't win a Super Bowl. I am going to go slightly easier on McCarthy. I'm not going to say that Super Bowl is make or break. I'm going to go one step lower with an NFC championship. I think that is going to be the only way that we're not talking about him being on the hot seat after 2022. Brady mentioned that last Super Bowl win. That was 1995. That was also the last time they were in an NFC title game. They're one of just 3 teams in the NFC that has not been to a conference championship game since 2000, and that is a pretty ugly drought. So if Mike McCarthy doesn't want to listen to hours and hours of nonstop sports talk about Sean Payton maybe taking over the Cowboys job, then he needs to get to at least the NFC title game. If you go 8-9, 7-10, if you have a losing record, that's all anyone's going to talk about. If you get to the playoffs but lose your first game, that's all anyone's going to talk about. So the only way you're going to stave this off for at least one more season, I think, is to at least get to the conference title game.
You're saying get to it, not even win one. Because
no, not even win it. Just
you said win the conference. I'm like, is that big of a difference from going to a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl?
I already lowered the bar, Brady. I lowered the bar already. Just get there.
You see? You're already trying to help him out. I mean, let's not forget this too, Ryan. Remember when Dan Quinn was a hot head coaching candidate and people were like, oh, maybe they're going to move off Mike McCarthy to keep Dan Quinn so he doesn't leave. And then Sean Payton left the Saints and everyone's like, ooh, we know how much Jerry Jones loves bringing back those offensive minds. I mean, I can see Sean Payton sitting out for a year doing TV in L.A., drinking a bunch of cocktails out there and kicking his feet up and then getting that Dallas Cowboys job if things don't go well this season. So I'm telling you right now, as we know, it's Super Bowl to me or bust. And in part because they made it to the playoffs, they won the division last year. Yet when you see how they lose under Mike McCarthy, it is just mind-boggling. I mean, I still haven't gotten over that play call at the end of the game.
No, you're right, Brady. 2 things. Breach, for some reason, has this weird soft spot for the Cowboys, so that's something. And let me check notes here. Show everyone your draft board. I'm not sure if that's a euphemism, but here we go. Who's your pick to win the NFC East? Brady, let's go to you. You just said the Cowboys are terrible. Who you taking?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Cowboys to win the division, though, in part because I just, I don't think the division's very good. I mean, so yeah, they can win the division. I don't know if that's saying a whole lot. It will be. I mean, I think I'm most interested in Philly, just to see if they can, follow up a second season. But I'll take the Cowboys at this point. I mean, I feel much better about what they are, but I think Philly's nipping on their heels.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Brady. Being the best in the NFC East, that's like me walking into a first grade class and being excited I'm the tallest person. It's like you don't get a lot of credit for that. I think that the Cowboys, look, they won the division by 3 games last season over the Eagles, a lot more games over Washington, the Giants. All 3 of those teams have gotten better, but I don't know that they have closed that gap just yet, so I feel like the Cowboys are the pick here.
To a first grade classroom and be the tallest person there? Because I don't know. I've seen you in person and I've seen first graders. I got a lot of questions. That said, I'm going to go. By the way, Breach, one time Brady Quinn thought I was 6'1". Can you believe that? How good did that make me feel? Not even the hair, no afro like Fletch there. Yeah, I'll take it all day long. Proportions, baby. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. You guys are, for some reason, jumping on as much as you can that Cowboys bandwagon. I do not trust Mike McCarthy for anything, anywhere, ever. I think Nick Sirianni got better as the season progressed, found out ways to use Jalen Hurts properly. Jalen Hurts now has the weapons. The defense is going to be better. And as we've just sort of figured out, it's not a very good division. So I'm going to go Philadelphia Eagles. Welcome back to the Pick Six Podcast Show. Brady, Breach, me. Talking NFC South. Brady, we'll start with you since you're our resident quarterback. Breach was a punter once. He said he boomed 180 yards and then tackled the returner. I don't believe any of that. So I'm going to start with you. The other Brady, Tom Brady, unretired. I'm pretty sure his wife's like, you got to get out of here because you're annoying the crap out of us. We don't need you here. Please go back to work. Did that. There were some rumors that perhaps he wanted to be a part owner of the Dolphins. There were some rumors that Sean Payton was going to be involved in some crazy scheme to go to Miami with him. Instead, he's back in Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians is retired. Todd Bowles is the coach. What does this all mean? And at any point in the process, did you think that perhaps Brady stepped beyond the bounds of what he should be doing as just an NFL quarterback?
Man, that's a loaded question. There's a lot there, a lot to unpack. I would just start off by this. I think anytime you're an athlete, and especially one that's been as accomplished as he has, and you have other people who are speaking for you as far as when you're hanging it up, it's probably tough to go out like that. And even if he was contemplating it or thinking about it, and for whatever reasons were behind it, or whatever the plan was, if he was going to come back out of it, regardless, it seemed like it wasn't how Tom Brady should go out. We all imagine him going out on top. Maybe he will, but at the end of the day, I don't know if it was a disagreement with Bruce Arians or not liking something about him. They don't seem to be that way, at least on the surface. And obviously, Bruce Arians is still around the organization. He was there on draft day, right next to Todd Bowles as they were making selections. So it's not even as if, Bruce Arians isn't still around. The reality is, if all that stuff that was rumored to have happened in Miami, it was more about life after football. And that's always going to be there for Tom Brady and Stephen Ross if he wants to become a minority owner of the Miami Dolphins and if they want to live in Miami. That's always going to be there. The best chance for him to win a Super Bowl, again, with the Tampa Bay is with the Tampa Bay Bucks, and especially with the guys that they've been able to get back on this roster and continue to surround him with the type of pieces that he needs. So I know this much. I'm glad he came out of retirement and came back. The NFL is obviously better with Tom Brady, but so is the NFC South, because if he wasn't coming back, my God, this would be the worst division in football.
Yeah, we would have been staring at Kyle Trask or Blaine Gabbert against Marcus Mariota, Sam Darnold. Yeah, it's not anything anyone would have wanted to watch. Those NFC South games would have been at 1 p.m. Those are the games that are only shown to 1% of the country. But you know what? Look, Tom Brady, nobody can argue with how he does things. The guy has won 7 Super Bowls. He's 44. He's been in the NFL for more than 20 years. If he wants to retire every offseason and take a month off and then unretire a month later, do it. As long as Brady comes back, because I think football is more exciting when he's on the field. He's such a competitor, and whatever team he plays for is always going to be a Super Bowl contender. Although I do think there was a little smoke to that Dolphins fire. And the one thing about Brady coming back is, look, he restructured his contract a couple weeks ago. You know what he didn't do during that restructuring? Add any more years to the deal, which means he's going to be a free agent next March. he's going to be able to play for whoever he wants to. You know where Tom Brady is today on Friday, May 6th? He's down in Miami because that's where he hangs out all the time. And so it won't be surprising if he ends up there. But for now, he is in Tampa Bay, and the Buccaneers should cakewalk to that division with him on the roster.
Breach is our special teams correspondent. Where are you on the Buccaneers using a fourth-round pick on a punter?
I would have been higher on it if they had to use it on a different punter. The Buccaneers, clearly, their special teams drafting seems to go awry. We saw them getting Roberto Aguayo in 2016. I thought Jake Camarda was about the fourth best punter in the draft. Somehow he was the second punter taken. It's like they panic selected him after the Ravens took Jordan Stout at 130, and then the Buccaneers took Camarda 3 picks later. But you know what? If he comes in, he produces, and he ends up being a starter for the next 10 years, then the pick pans out. But, I don't know. Bradley Pinion's done a decent job for them for the past few years.
You can't pick a punter with your fourth-round pick on a team that Tom Brady's on, because everyone's going to say to you, you could have found the next Tom Brady in the fourth round or fifth round or wherever after that. So I think if you're drafting players, in particular a punter or a kicker or something like that, you got to save it for after the spot Tom Brady was drafted, just so you can't turn back around and say to you, hey, you know where I was drafted? I was drafted in the 6th round, because you know he's always going to use that.
The best part of the last 2 minutes is that nowhere else on the internet are you going to find this in-depth of coverage of special teamers in the draft, number one. Number two, he was 4th. The punter was. Jake Camarda was 4th on Breach's list of punters coming into the draft. I love it. All right, you know all the punters' names in every college division on planet Earth, Breach. Somehow you dismissed Jameis Winston when going through the NFC South quarterbacks a moment ago. How dare you? Let's talk about the Saints. Brady, I'll start with you. Jameis Winston tore his ACL in late October. He was playing some of the best football of his career up to that point. How big a loss is Sean Payton, number one? And what do you expect from Jameis Winston coming off that ACL, which will be 10, 11 months by the time he gets back on the field? I think they have a chance to be a good football team.
I think they have a chance as well, and I think that's why they drafted the way they did. And I guess you'd call it uber aggressive and giving up a lot to go up and grab a wide receiver, for example, and Chris Olave. But I do think that signals that they don't feel like there's going to be a drop-off just because Sean Payton decided to hang it up, at least for this year. How big of a loss is that, though? Huge. I mean, Sean Payton never gets enough credit for the type of play caller that he is, how creative he can be, dealing with multiple starting quarterbacks over the Drew Brees ending, Taysom Hill finding ways to make him successful, whether it's a starter or as a gadget piece within that offense. Alvin Kamara, getting him touches, getting him the football. Everyone knows at times, they're going to load up the box to stop him. They still find production. So they're going to miss that big time. And there's only so many guys in the league that you can really point to week in and week out that really force your opponent's hand as far as how they game plan. Sean Payton's one of those guys, and again, he doesn't get enough credit for it. So I think Jameis Winston's going to miss him. I think their offense is going to miss him, and I think it makes it even harder, too, not knowing the status of Michael Thomas, where the Chris Olave draft pick looks great in and of itself, but if you add Michael Thomas to that group with Alvin Kamara in the backfield and the other pieces they have, even with Taysom Hill mixing in as that gadget piece, now it becomes pretty potent. And that's the problem, though, is you don't know what to expect out of Michael Thomas, and you don't have that confidence in the play calling ability. So I'm hedging for being optimistic about this Saints team, but it's, I'm going to have to see it to believe it when it's all said and done.
Wilson, I think I left Jameis Winston off my list of NFC South quarterbacks because I was secretly hoping that Andy Dalton would be the starter this year. But no, we all know it's going to be Jameis Winston as long as he is healthy. And you know what? You look at what the Saints did on the field when he was playing last year before that ACL injury. The Saints beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. They crushed him in week 1, 38-3. The Saints beat Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. The Saints are undefeated against Brady in the regular season. So there's no reason they can't compete in the NFC South. But as Brady said, it's going to be about, is this offense still going to be functional without Sean Payton, without his brilliance back there calling the plays? Because they have plenty of weapons with Michael Thomas and now Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara. So that is there. But is it going to be as successful without Payton? The other thing is their defense is good enough to keep them in games. We saw it last year when Tom Brady and the Buccaneers got shut out in a game. So Dennis Allen being the head coach, I think he's going to keep that defense kind of humming along. And we know the defense is good enough to keep them in games as the offense gets its feet wet, playing its first few weeks and just kind of figuring out how to play without Sean Payton back there calling the plays.
So it's surprising there's only one quarterback went in the first round last week. That was Kenny Pickett, 20th to the future Super Bowl champ Steelers. Sorry about that breach. So, Brady, straightforward question, maybe not so much a straightforward answer. Of the quarterbacks that went to the NFC South teams, who plays first this year? Matt Corral in Carolina or Desmond Ridder in Atlanta?
It's got to be Desmond Ridder. I mean, there's a couple of reasons why. One, I'm not sure Matt Corral, who I wasn't really high on, and sorry to go against your opinion there, Ryan, but I was never high on him in this year's draft class. So I think he'll have a much harder time transitioning into the NFL. And so it may be tough to just roll out Sam Darnold and say, ho-hum, here's our next guy. But I think it's a different story when we talk about Atlanta. Desmond Ridder played a lot of football during his time in college. He demonstrated the ability to be able to extend plays, sound decision maker. Does he still have some things to work on? Sure. But Marcus Mariota is going to get hurt. He's never been healthy for an entire season in his career. And on top of that, not really financially obligated to pay him much this year. So outside of a signing bonus, the door's wide open for Desmond Ridder to come in there and take over and be the guy in Atlanta. And I think they're looking for that. So to me, it's Desmond Ridder, and for a number of reasons. But I just think overall, I had him higher on my list as far as quarterbacks. And I think he's more NFL ready than Matt Corral is.
Yeah, I want to agree with Brady, but that doesn't make for good TV. So I'm going to disagree with the guy who actually played in the NFL about who the next NFL starting quarterback is going to be in the NFC South. Look, it very well could be Desmond Ridder, but I do feel like Arthur Smith is going to give Marcus Mariota a very good chance to start and keep that position. Smith and Mariota go way back because Arthur Smith was with the Titans organization when Mariota got drafted and while he was there. So they are familiar with each other. But as Brady also said, Mariota's always an injury factor with him where he goes down, boom, the backup's in. But the reason I'm taking Matt Corral here is because it looks like the Panthers are looking for any excuse to move on from Sam Darnold. They lose the first game. Maybe Sam Darnold throws for 300 yards. They still blame it on him just because they want him on the bench. It just seems like they are over Sam Darnold. They don't want him as a starting quarterback anymore. So I think Darnold is going to have a short leash through the first few weeks of the season. And if he struggles at all, I won't be surprised if they turn to Matt Corral.
Higher on Matt Corral than Desmond Ridder, but I mean, both guys end up going to the third round. Part of the reason I think it might be Carolina is they gave up an extra third to move back up into the bottom of the third round to get Matt Corral. And Breach talked about the issues with Sam Darnold. Unlike Arthur Smith, I feel like Matt Rule is firmly in the hot seat, so maybe he just starts throwing things at the wall if things go sideways early. Not that necessarily the Matt Corral's going to be a better NFL player than Desmond Ridder. I don't know. And Brady talked about why Desmond Ridder has a chance to be really good. But these are two organizations that are currently going in the wrong way. It feels like the Falcons might be quicker to turn things around, but both teams are not good football teams as we sit here. And on that note, let's talk about some win totals for teams in this division here. Brady, I'll start with you, and then Breach, you can follow. I'll back clean up here. What team do you like, Brady, and what do you think they're going to do on their win totals?
I got to be honest with you. I looked through the list of win totals. I don't like many of them at all, and just for the sake of not agreeing on maybe one other one, I'm just going to go with the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, look, Brady's coming back. Who knows? Maybe Gronk comes back. Talked about Edelman joining the team as well. It seems like when Brady comes back, you can get the band back together. I don't have high praise or hopes really for this division outside of the Buccaneers, so if I have to, I'll take the over here. I get a little juice there as well. But that's the only team I feel confident in is going to be a playoff team and really can win this division.
You know what? I'm going to get a little crazy here. I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers. We see their number, their over-under is set at 6. Look, we always talk about how bad they have been so far with Matt Rule as their head coach. But guess what? As bad as he's been, they won 5 games his first season, 5 games his second season, and I think this is the best team that they've had since he's been there. They totally upgraded on the offensive line. They used their first-round pick on Aquanu. Then they got Bradley Boseman at center, signed him away from the Ravens. Austin Corbett signed him away from the Rams to play guard, and I think those are 3 huge additions because the Panthers really struggled on the offensive line, and I think they can just eke past that 5-win mark and get the 6 for the push and maybe even 7 so you win that over bet.
So just to be clear, you draft an offensive lineman and sign 2 others, and that's worth 1.5 wins according to Breach. Okay, Breach. Don't bet the Carolina Panthers if you're listening. I'm going to go with a much more sensible pick, as Breach wonders why there's no money between his fingers because he lost it all betting on the Panthers over. I'm going to go with the Saints. The Saints over 7.5. That feels like a layup. I know that Sean Payton's gone, but Carmichael's going to run the exact same offense he's been running. Dennis Allen's been there for years, the new head coach on the defensive side of the ball. James will be back and better than ever. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Mike Thomas plays. They have Chris Olave, Trevor Penning, who was part of the deal to move up, and they gave him a ton for it. So he needs to work out at either left or right tackle wherever he ends up. But again, the division outside of Tampa Bay isn't very good, so there are a lot of wins to be had within the division. And then just to get to 8 wins, you can still finish below 500 with just getting to the 8. So I like the over 7.5. Whatever you do, don't bet the over the Panthers. I'm saving you right now. If that team goes over 6 wins, Breach, I don't know what I'll do. I'll be very surprised.
You're going to tattoo.
All right. There,
yeah,
yep.
You'll get a tattoo.
I'll get another I'll get another fake tattoo, and you guys can lambaste me about that. So let's see how the Carolina Panthers do in 2022. For now, we're going to take a little break. We've got one more segment to go, one more NFC division to cover, and we'll do it right after this break. Welcome back to the Pick Six Podcast Show. Down the home stretch, fellas, going to talk a little NFC North. Brady, I'll start with you. The record remains intact. The Packers have not drafted a wide receiver in the first round going back to 2002. They're crushing it in the second round. Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Devontae Adams, who's no longer with the team. If you're Aaron Rodgers, how do you feel about this? Because there was some reporting that he actually knew Devontae Adams was going to have to move on or was willing to move on when he returned, Aaron Rodgers did, and now that has happened. Aaron Rodgers said he was surprised a few weeks ago. I don't think he was. Is Aaron Rodgers feeling good in that division that isn't very strong, or does he have some reservations about where things stand offensively?
I mean, look, I think it's hard anytime you lose your number one wide receiver. That's kind of your security blanket, if you will. When they need a play, that's who he goes to. And they knew each other like the back of each other's hand. That chemistry is hard to develop in one offseason. So even though Christian Watson looks to be that next wide receiver who was drafted in the second round and is going to follow in the footsteps of Devontae Adams or Greg Jennings or Jordy Nelson or whoever else you want to throw in that conversation, there's still a lot of time between now and then, a lot of work to be done in order to get to that point. So the truth of the matter is, I'm sure he was concerned by it, maybe not surprised, and maybe had an idea of what may take place and had to be okay with it if he wanted to eventually come back and sign the contract that he did. But at the end of the day, he just wants to win a Super Bowl. I mean, that's what this is about. The Green Bay Packers give him the best chance not only winning the division, but winning a Super Bowl by coming back. And I think they had one of the better drafts, too, in drafting exactly to their needs and trying to give him one more shot at winning one.
Yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is happy as things stand because, hey, they finally took a receiver, period. It might not have been in the first round, but it was with one of the top 34 picks. I'm sure he was thrilled jumping off his couch or doing one of those 3-finger tequila sips he likes to do. He saw the Packers actually trade up. They had 2 second-round picks in the 50s, parlayed that, and turned it into the 34th overall pick in Christian Watson. But as Brady said, even if Watson is good, it's not going to be easy to replicate the chemistry and success he had with Devontae Adams. It's probably not going to happen. And so if Christian Watson can't do that, then your offense isn't as good as it was last year or the year before, or as good as it's been every year since Matt LaFleur's been hired and Aaron Rodgers has had Devontae Adams to throw to. And so if your offense is taking a step back, you got to lean a little bit more on your defense. And so in that sense, it does make sense that they use 2 of their first-round picks on defensive players. I do think that the Packers are good this season, but man, this feels like last year I thought they were a Super Bowl contender. This year, I'm not so sure they're one of the top 2 teams in the NFC.
All right, Breach, I'm coming right back to you because you are a fan of a team that's been a perennial loser until last year, credit to the Cincinnati Bengals. I want to talk about the Bears and the Lions. Which team, in your mind, post-free agency, post-draft, is going in the right direction or going closer to the right direction? Is it Detroit or is it Chicago?
Did you watch The Wizard of Oz before this segment, Wilson? You just mentioned the Bengals, the Bears, and the Lions. That's Lions and Tigers and Bears. That was impressive. Look, I would like to think that I think the Lions are better situated. The Lions are better situated for the future in my eyes. We all watched what the Bears did. Justin Fields doesn't really have any weapons there. They're not doing him any favors. I don't know how that offense is going to function with a second-year quarterback who just doesn't really have any weapons on that offense. And so And then you look at Detroit, it looks like that whole city, not just the team, they are all turning into Dan Campbell. His personality is everywhere. It's stamped onto that team. And I love what they did in the draft. I love that they traded up to get Jameson Williams and get another weapon for Jared Goff, who probably had a slightly underrated season last year. The Aiden Hutchinson pick, he fell into their lap. That defense was good last year. And this was a team that, even though they lost 13 games, I think 5 or 6 of those games were by one score. They lost on a 66-yard field goal, so they can play with good teams. And so I stock higher with Lions over the Bears.
Oh, slam dunk. It's all about the Detroit Lions. I mean, heck, they got Hard Knocks coming on there, too. I mean, can you wait to see Dan Campbell on Hard Knocks? That's going to be fantastic. But look, I think they drafted to really what their needs were. I mean, you can talk about Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, they got in trouble for turning into Pickens so soon. That's how excited they were to draft this guy, who's obviously a Michigan native, went to the University of Michigan. But he'll be a game changer for that defense, which breached this touchdown. Was already pretty good last year. So they're definitely heading in the right direction there. To me, it was about, trying to get some playmakers. And I don't know when Jameson Williams will be healthy and ready to go, but my goodness, they need it in the worst way. And I think when he is healthy, if you think about Swift out of the backfield, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and T.J. Hockenson, those are some weapons for Jared Goff. That can get it done. Their offensive line's scrappier and more physical and better than I think most people give them credit. So, dare I say, Detroit, yeah, they're better than the Bears, and maybe even depending on what happens this year with the Vikings, even though they have a better roster, could compete for that second spot in the NFC North when it's all said and done.
Yeah, no one is talking about Jared Goff anymore. It's all about the weapons around him. All right, let's do a little value pick to win the NFC North. Breach, I'll go to you first. Who do you like in the NFC North?
My value pick is the Vikings at plus 260. Look, they went 8-9 last season, but 8 of those 9 losses were by one score. If they would have just gone, 4-4 in those 8 of those 9 one-score games, then they are 12-5. So I think coaching is a big reason why you lose that many one-score games. New coaching staff. So I like their value at plus 260.
You know what? I'm taking the Packers at minus 170. You see the history, 3 straight. Yeah, well, it'll be 4 straight after this year. And the only reason these odds aren't even heavier in favor of the Packers winning at minus 250 or minus 300 is because Devontae Adams isn't there. I mean, that's really your only concern with this team going into this season is what's the passing game going to look like? But last time I checked, you mentioned a lot of other second-round receivers who had previously been there, Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams and Cobb, who left, now he's back, and Greg Jennings. They seem to still do just fine. So I think maybe it has a little bit to do with Aaron Rodgers and his ability to just dominate this division. We already know he owns real estate there at Soldier Field in Chicago. You can kind of make the case that he pretty much owns real estate everywhere else. So I think the odds only going to get more in the favor of Green Bay as this offseason rolls on.
Guys, we've been talking up Dan Campbell and the Lions. I'm all in on Dan Campbell. Plus 1,200, you can't beat that. Jared Goff is better than Aaron Rodgers. Whatever you need to tell yourself to make you convinced that the Lions are going to be good this year. They'll be better. We'll see how much better. But I like them at plus 1,200 for sure. All right, that's a wrap. We're done. It's Friday. You ain't got no job. You ain't got nothing to do. That's a little Friday joke for you. All right, we're done. If you like this, even if you didn't, subscribe to the Pick 6 podcast, wherever you get your podcast, and we'll catch you guys on the flippity flop.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.